You know this type of fan. They may be a familiar face in a community. They may be a close friend. They may even be you. They're the fans who go against popular opinion. They may not like a popular game. They may like an unpopular character, or they may hold a different opinion than what's accepted by the community. They're the Contrarian, a magnet for discourse, heated debate, and an assumed negative environment. But they can also bring in different viewpoints, new considerations, and maybe even change the attitude of a community in a potentially significant way. Let's talk about the Contrarian fan. These type of fans can come about in a few ways. I think the most common is frustration from a popular opinion. Typically, such opinion is repetitive high acclaim for something specific. After hearing the love parroted a number of times, it can feel inescapable. It's also possible the Contrarian felt underwhelmed by the subject and found the frequent praise entirely undue. I'm sure there are many people watching this video who could think of times that popular opinion has led them to take the opposite stance of whatever was popular. I know it's something I'm guilty of in both cases. For instance, on the inescapable side, Garrus is a very popular character in Mass Effect, and the sheer amount of love he receives from the fandom makes it harder for me to like him as much as I used to. This has nothing to do with how good or bad he is as a character, merely a frustration with the fandom he has. On the undue side, Skyrim is well regarded and a staple of many players' top 10 list. Yet for me, it wasn't anything special. It felt highly restrictive compared to its predecessors, and I just do not get the love for it. It has a few things I found to be an improvement, but most of the game felt very watered down for my own tastes. These are two contrarian opinions brought about by overwhelming popularity. One exhausted of the praise alone, and the other one simply feels that the praise isn't justified. Others may also become irritated that their opinions aren't as popular as the current most accepted take. Maybe they feel a game is due more respect than the favorite one of a series, or maybe a character they like is often an outcast on people's lists. Regardless, they're less likely frustrated with a popular opinion itself, but more frustrated that most people don't share their own sentiment, which in turn makes them stand against the popular take. Such can overlap with lack of justification, but not always. It could also be less resentment and more of a belief. They may notice information that most gloss over or see things a different way, leading towards an idea that molds itself more genuine. In their eyes, it becomes less of an opinion and more truth. It's a subtle difference, but in this case, they typically hold a contrarian stance without ill will for the popular stance. They just don't agree with it. And yes, we cannot deny the reality that there are those who choose to hold an opposing take merely because it encourages specific reactions. It can rile up a community and strike arguments, much to the enjoyment of the person who holds said take. There could be a different incentive. In the case of YouTubers, controversy gets clicks, a lot of clicks. So stoking the fires can lead to more views and thus more income if they're a YouTube partner. If not simply trolling for fun, you might assume the Contrarian is going to be entirely ignored, or talked down enough by many voices until they leave. It's definitely true that what many dubbed as echo chambers prefer not to be challenged. However, they're not entirely untouchable, just really hard. The Contrarian is most impactful in the community they engage with frequently: Discord servers, forums, and social networking sites, including YouTube and Reddit. Now, it's difficult to change anyone's mind in general, but it does happen. Obviously, this is going to depend on a few factors. Chief among them is how they engage in disagreements and the presentation of arguments. Hostility and insults are unlikely to be taken seriously. Most people are going to ignore any argument presented when faced with what they view as toxicity. It's also a sticking point with something I said prior. A Contrarian is most impactful in a community they engage with frequently. If they're hostile and banned, they lose access to that community. A more civil user is likely to last much longer and, over time, with good arguments, may make a few people change their outlook even if just a bit. After a while, picking up people who align with some of their ideas, they can counter the popular opinion of a community in a more potent way. It may still be small, but the dynamic shifted and may continue to move in that direction. With enough momentum, it can snowball into something bigger. Now, smaller communities can be a double-edged sword. It might be even harder to crack a tight-knit community. I really do not see anybody ever changing too many minds over at No Mutants Allowed, for instance. They've seen argument after argument, largely from new users who come in, raise a fuss, and leave. However, in such small communities, there's less people a contrarian needs to reach out to overall. In theory, contrarians could turn a small community much faster. In theory. In practice, a smaller community has a number of people each user trusts pretty well, and different voices just do not have much pull. So it might be easier to cast a wide net and try to grab as many people as they can. Very large social media sites allow someone to seek out those who are already like-minded or perhaps predisposed to buy whatever they're selling for a variety of reasons. This is because of two things. Number one, the user count will be much higher than something like a forum. And number two, these sites are typically pushing specific content that certain users are likely to engage with. With that in mind, most other social media sites are probably better for this than Reddit, as those are bigger entirely and don't have established community borders. Plus, any individual subreddit will have a culture already, and those tend to downvote dissenting opinions to the point they become softly hidden, which encourages a hive mind. Meanwhile, most other social media sites are big lights without hard borders, but there are currents in the form of content pushes. And that helps in another way. A contrarian may not need to be as polite as some of the smaller communities may require them to be. Just not break any of those websites' terms of service. Still, a contrarian may be more convincing if they're polite and soft-spoken, even if the opinion itself is controversial. Presenting well-thought-out arguments is less likely to cause someone who holds a popular opinion to close it out immediately. They may still pick it up hard, but they're more likely to see it through, which matters. Regardless of how the message is presented, controversial videos or posts have often made the rounds. This message can broadcast strongly and find its way to the specific users that the website thinks will engage with it, allowing the contrarian to carve out a niche for themselves. Now, whether that niche and message is good or bad is, of course, entirely debatable. After all, a controversial message about game opinions isn't controversial because those opinions are inherently malicious. It's just not the accepted standard. A YouTuber who made a video about how New Vegas isn't all that great would be met with a ton of disagreements, but they may have well-reasoned points, even if plenty would let their emotions take over and feel attacked. On the other hand, they may also be chasing down cash potential from the clicks it would get, as mentioned a while ago. The contrarian fan is one that can swing in either direction. The message and how they handle such is what really matters. It's easier and honestly human nature to side with what's popular. There's even scientific research behind this. Follow the herd, safety in numbers. Popular opinion is popular opinion for both tangible and psychological reasons. But it's often the case that members who have such opinions use it as a bit of a sword and a shield to dismiss genuine contrarians entirely, sometimes with hostility. That said, the same is true for some contrarians. They can weaponize their own unpopular take. I feel it would be better to hear any opposing gaming opinions and their points, if they're presenting their arguments with civility. To clarify, I'm not saying you should immediately agree with them, or even ever agree with them. Why agree with something if you feel the exact opposite way? Still, I always want to encourage healthy debate. See their reasons, present your arguments against theirs, hear their arguments in return. Ideally, this would go off without any hurt feelings or emotional outbreak. But games are a surprisingly touchy subject, and people are aware of that. There are those who simply wish to cause trouble. Attacking someone's favorite game can spark arguments really easily. It's a shame, yes, but people cannot control the actions of others. They can only control their own actions. That includes how they handle contrary opinions. And who knows, maybe with a decent debate, someone's outlook by the end of it will change, even if only a little. And a special thanks to my channel members, especially my members, ThriceOver members, like That Crazy Game Developer and Danny McPhee. If you'd like to support me and join as well, I'd be more than happy. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, all that typical YouTube stuff. Thank you. Have a good one.